How to respond when he reaches out after silence, you've been ghosted, or maybe he just faded out, days, maybe weeks, and now suddenly ping, your phone lights up, a message from him. What do you do? Let me tell you something right now. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they remembered you existed. His silence told you something, his message now, that's noise, but the real question isn't why he's reaching out, it's what are you going to do about it? First, pause, don't rush into replying. When someone disappears, it's not your job to make them comfortable coming back. This is your moment to choose you. Respond only if you feel calm, not reactive. You want clarity, not closure dressed as conversation. You're not hoping his message finally means he's ready. Here's the truth. A man coming back isn't always a sign he's changed. Sometimes it's just a sign he's bored, lonely, or checking if you're still available. You're not a placeholder. You're not an option, you're the standard. So what's the best response? One that reflects your self-respect. You could say, "Hey, I'm curious, what made you reach out after all this time?" Or, "I wasn't expecting to hear from you." I'm not sure what the intention is here. The goal isn't to shame him. It's to stay rooted in your standards, not swept up in someone else's inconsistency. And finally, don't forget, the most powerful response sometimes is no response at all. When someone goes silent, it speaks volumes, even if they never say a word. Silence is rarely neutral. It's a choice, a decision to not show up, to not communicate, to not invest, and that choice carries a message, even if it's uncomfortable to hear. It might mean they were unsure, distracted, disinterested, or unwilling to prioritize relationship. Regardless of the reason, their silence already communicated where they stood in that moment. And that's something you have to acknowledge with honesty, rather than explain away with hope. When he reaches out after a period of silence, it can stir a mix of emotions. Relief, excitement, confusion, even anger. But underneath all of that, the question we often forget to ask is, what did his silence already tell me? Because that silence gave you data about his consistency, his effort, his emotional availability, and maybe even his respect for you. When someone disappears without a word and then resurfaces as if nothing happened, it's tempting to feel like you're being offered a second chance, but it's not always a second chance at love. Sometimes it's just a second chance to repeat a cycle that hurt you the first time. It's human to crave answers. You may find yourself wondering why he pulled away, what changed, if he missed you, or if maybe he just got scared. And while those questions are natural, they're also distractions. They pull your focus outward toward trying to understand him, when your real power lies in focusing inward. Instead of asking why he went quiet, ask yourself what kind of treatment you want to normalize in your life. Do you want to be with someone who disappears when things get inconvenient, or someone who communicates with maturity and consistency? What's important to understand is that silence from someone you're dating or emotionally invested in isn't just an absence. It creates a shift in the dynamic. It erodes trust. It introduces doubt. It leaves you doing emotional labor in their absence, overthinking, justifying, wondering what you did wrong. But a healthy relationship doesn't thrive on guessing games. It grows in clarity, honesty, and mutual effort. So when he finally reaches back out, that message doesn't erase the silence that came before it. It doesn't nullify the discomfort you sat with or the time you spent wondering. You're not obligated to pick up where you left off just because he's chosen to come back now. His silence already spoke. It's up to you to decide whether that message is something you can move past or something that, for your own emotional well-being, needs to be accepted as the truth of who he was at that time. The power here lies not in his return, but in your response, because what his silence meant may be less about him and more about what you now know you need. When someone who disappeared suddenly reaches out, your first instinct might be to respond immediately. That ping of a message can feel like a rush-like validation, like hope reignited, like something you've been waiting for finally arrived. But before you type a single word, you need to do something powerful. Pause. That moment of silence between receiving the message and choosing your response isn't weakness, it's strength. It's where your clarity lies, reacting from a place of Emotion, whether it's excitement, anxiety, anger, or curiosity, can lead you straight into a dynamic where he controls the rhythm. You begin responding to his timing, his needs, and his choices rather than standing in your own. And often, when someone has gone silent for a while and then comes back, they're not necessarily thinking about how you felt during the absence. They're thinking about themselves, how they feel in the moment, what they miss, what they want. That's not inherently wrong, but it's not a reason for you to abandon your boundaries. Pausing allows you to shift the center of the story back to you. It gives you the breathing space to ask yourself real questions. What do I want right now? Am I responding because I miss him, or because I'm hoping this time will be different? Do I feel calm and clear-headed, or am I spiraling through what-ifs and fantasies? These are not questions you can answer well in the heat of emotion. That's why taking a pause is not about playing games. It's about protecting your peace and acting with intention. We live in a culture of instant gratification. A message comes in, and we feel pressure to reply within seconds, as if waiting too long means we're rude, cold, or might lose the chance. But you're not in a race, and if someone's interest in you is so fragile that it can't withstand a thoughtful pause, that says more about their emotional immaturity than your timing. Also, consider the pattern. Has this person reached out before and vanished again? Is this a first return or part of a cycle? When you pause instead of react, you give yourself time to recognize patterns, to see if this is genuine reconnection or just another round of inconsistency packaged in sweet words and vague apologies. In that space, you can reconnect with your own standards, your boundaries, and the version of you that knows what she deserves. Remember, there is no prize for being the fastest to forgive, respond, or reopen your heart. The real victory is in responding when you feel emotionally solid, when your perspective is clear, and when your decision honors your self-worth, not your loneliness. That kind of pause is powerful. It's where emotional maturity lives. It's where mistakes turn into lessons. And it's where you reclaim the driver's seat in your own love story. Your response to someone reaching out after a period of silence says more about how you value yourself than anything else. It's not about crafting the perfect message or making them feel a certain way. It's about showing up in a way that reflects your own self-worth, boundaries, and emotional maturity. When someone disappears and then suddenly decides to come back, it can be easy to slip into the mindset of trying to win them back or prove your worth. But here's the truth. You don't have to prove anything to someone who wasn't consistent in showing up for you in the first place. The way you respond, whether you reply, how you reply, or if you choose not to reply at all, should come from a place of self-respect, not insecurity. It's tempting to get caught up in the emotional rush. A message from someone you had feelings for can feel like a door opening again. But just because the door is open doesn't mean it leads somewhere healthy. You have to ask yourself, does this person deserve access to me again? Have they shown any sign that things will be different this time? Or are they just circling back because it's convenient? When you value yourself, you don't immediately jump back into old dynamics just because someone remembers you exist. You recognize that your time, energy, and emotions are valuable, and not everyone gets a second chance to be in your life. That doesn't mean you're cold or unforgiving. It means you have standards, and those standards act as filters to protect your peace and emotional well-being. Self-worth isn't loud or dramatic. It doesn't need to say, "Look how much I've changed," or "See how well I'm doing without you." It speaks quietly but clearly. It shows up in the decisions you make, in the boundaries you keep, and in the way you respond when someone returns with mixed intentions. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is acknowledge their message without giving them the emotional payoff they might be expecting. Or in other cases, you may choose to open the door slightly, but from a place of calm, with your eyes wide open, not from longing or fantasy. If you do respond, your words should reflect clarity. You can be kind without being overly available. You can be curious without being emotionally invested. The key is to make sure that whatever you say isn't driven by a fear of losing them again, but by a desire to honor yourself in every interaction. You don't shrink to make someone else feel comfortable. You don't lower your standards because they reappeared. You stay grounded in the version of yourself that knows if someone wants to be in your life, their actions will speak louder than their return message. Your response is an extension of your self-worth. So ask yourself, does this reply reflect the respect I have for myself? Because that's what truly matters, not whether he texts back again, but whether you feel proud of how you handled it. When someone who once disappeared reaches out again, it's easy to get caught up in the moment. The temptation is strong to focus on the fact that they're back, finally messaging, finally showing signs of interest, and to overlook what's truly important, their intention. Just because someone is giving you attention doesn't mean they're offering something meaningful. And when you're emotionally invested or have been waiting for a message like this, attention can feel like progress, but they're not the same thing. Attention is surface level. It's a text, a like on your photo, a hey, how have you been? At midnight, it's someone checking if the door is still open without necessarily wanting to walk through it. Intention, on the other hand, carries weight. It shows up through effort, consistency, communication, and follow-through. Someone who has real intention isn't just reaching out to satisfy their curiosity or soothe their boredom. They're reaching out with purpose, and they're willing to back that purpose with actions. When you get a message from someone who has been silent, pause and ask yourself, what are they really bringing to the table right now? Are they taking responsibility for their disappearance? Are they offering clarity or just vague conversation? Are they expressing a clear desire to rebuild something, or are they simply dipping a toe back in to see how warm water is? You deserve more than breadcrumbs. You deserve more than being someone's backup plan or emotional safety net. People reach out for all kinds of reasons, and not all of them are rooted in genuine care or long-term interest. Sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's loneliness, sometimes they just want to see if they still have access to you. That's why it's important to look beyond the gesture and assess the meaning behind it. Ask direct questions if you choose to engage. What made you reach out after all this time? Or what are you hoping for in reconnecting? Their answer, or lack of one, will tell you everything you need to know, and if they can't give you clarity, then that is your clarity, because people who truly want to be part of your life won't be vague. They'll make their intentions known, and they'll be consistent about it. Looking for intention over attention means you're no longer driven by emotional scraps. You're no longer holding on to someone just because they reappeared. You're not confusing presence with partnership. You're asking the right questions, not because you're trying to convince them to stay, but because you need to know whether this connection serves the version of you that knows your value. Attention can feel flattering, especially when it comes from someone you once cared about. But attention alone is not love, it's not respect, and it's not commitment. It's simply someone noticing you. Intention, however, is someone choosing you, consistently, clearly, and with care. That's the difference, and that's what you're worthy of. There's a lot of pressure to respond when someone reaches out, especially someone you've been emotionally tied to. Whether it's a simple hey, after weeks of silence, or a longer message trying to reopen the door, you might feel like ignoring them is rude, immature, or even petty. But the truth is, no response is a valid, powerful response. It's not silence out of spite. It's silence that speaks for your growth, your boundaries, and your decision to stop entertaining inconsistency. When someone who disappeared suddenly comes back, it often triggers a strong emotional pull. You remember the good moments, the potential, the connection. It's tempting to respond, not necessarily because you want to, but because part of you is still waiting for closure or clarity. But here's the hard truth. Closure doesn't always come in the form of a conversation. Sometimes closure is a decision you make for yourself, to not reopen something that left you confused, hurt, or feeling unworthy. Choosing not to respond doesn't make you cold. It means you've seen the pattern, you've felt the effects of their absence, and you've decided you don't want to invest any more energy in someone who didn't show up when it mattered. That's not bitterness, that's boundaries, and those boundaries protect your emotional well-being far more than any polite text ever could. People often come back not because they're ready to offer something meaningful, but because they want to feel reassured. Maybe they're bored, maybe things didn't work out elsewhere, maybe they just want to know they still have access to you. Responding gives them that access, it reopens the loop, it tells them, I'm still here if you change your mind. But if they already had the chance to be in your life and didn't value it, what are they really offering now? No response is a decision to prioritize your peace over their ego. It's a clear message that says, I'm not waiting. I'm not stuck in the past. I'm moving forward. And if you feel guilty about not replying, remind yourself that this person made a decision when they disappeared. They chose silence. You're simply matching the energy they introduced, but now on your own terms. There's a quiet strength in walking away without needing to explain yourself. You don't owe them a recap of how their absence affected you. You don't need to justify your silence. Your growth doesn't require their validation, and your healing doesn't hinge on their understanding. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is to break the cycle, to not reopen wounds just because the person who caused them is suddenly curious again. We're taught to be polite, to be understanding, to give people the benefit of the doubt, but maturity isn't always about being accommodating. It's also about knowing when silence is more powerful than words. When you choose not to respond, you reclaim control. You tell yourself, I matter enough to walk away from what no longer serves me, and that is the kind of message that never needs to be typed out to be fully understood. Thank you.